Welcome to a very special preview edition of the World Cup 2018. To my immediate right is JJ Devaney, co-host of Caught Offside podcast, and personally my favorite soccer insider. I guess you would call it football, though.
Football is fine, soccer is fine. We're not going to get caught up in those technicalities. We know each other too long for this.
That's a good man. And right now we are at Carragher's in Midtown Manhattan, right on 39th Street. This place is amazing. This is the place to watch if you're in New York City, all the World Cup matches.
It's the biggest Liverpool bar in the city. The owner, Brian, is a huge Red. Jamie Carragher frequents here regularly. This is a bar for Reds.
We love to compare the countries in the World Cup to American sports equivalents. Let's start with Uruguay, okay? To me, Uruguay feels a little bit like the Charles Barkley Sons. Talented with a really diabolical combustible superstar in Suarez. Talented, but you know ultimately that superstar could undo you.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not there. I'm not there. And I'll tell you why. They do have the superstars up front, but the way I feel about them is you look at that defense. So who does that make them? It makes them probably the New York Giants. Over a long period, what were the Giants built on? Built on defense.
Always defense.
Built on being the very best. And in Diego Godin, they've got one of the best defenders in the world. I mean, his name has been linked with every top club right now, and he's been the mainstay of that Atletico Madrid defense under Diego Simeone. So I see them as a defensive team first. Tim Vickery, who's a South American insider, calls their football from a bunker. So you can imagine, you hurl out a grenade, you wait, but you're staying inside your bunker. And I think that kind of makes sense to me. So I would say they're more defensive, and therefore I go for maybe, the 85 Bears, but long-term, the New York Giants.
I like that. Now, France has depth, right? But France also, they kind of curry a lot of distaste around the world. Nobody really wants to root for France, playing to the refs a little bit. How about them being the Bad Boy Pistons of the 80s? A lot of depth, top to bottom, good bench, really good defensively, but nobody really wants the grudging respect we give France.
I'll go with that. I was challenged on trying to find a team for France because this French team has got all the components. So I think you've got to look at maybe Chip Kelly era Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of talent. You think they've got it sorted out. They really don't. And as much as Chip tells you they have a system, they don't have a system. There's no system. Go back to the college ranks. And so maybe Deschamps has to go back to the club ranks. France used to have Gallic flair. They have none of that anymore. They're a bunch of individual talent. And if they're going to win, it's going to be because that talent jumps out of the shackles of Deschamps' rule, if you want to put it that way.
Let's get into the bottom half of that bracket. How about Brazil being the greatest show on turf? The 1990s, early 2000s St. Louis Rams, all of the weapons, Neymar being either Kurt Warner or Marshall Faulk, obvious Hall of Famer, but they've won, but they've also at times looked like a disaster. Kind of like the Rams losing to the Patriots in that Super Bowl. High flying, a lot of offense, could be exciting, but you never know which version you're going to get.
See, if you know Kurt Warner, he's a humble guy from a humble background and worked a long way to get where he needed to be. Neymar is not that.
True.
And I would say that if you want to make a comparison, I would go with A-Rod Jeter era Yankees. Okay, so A-Rod was definitely the most talented. And I think on balance, in full form, in full fitness, Neymar is more talented than Coutinho. But Coutinho is more of a team player. And if you look at this World Cup right now, Coutinho is Jeter. When he's up at bat, he's going to get a hit. He's going to do something for the team in a big spot. You look at what happened against Costa Rica, it's a topo. You look at what happened against Switzerland, it's a curling shot into the top corner from Coutinho. And if you look at Serbia, a crucial game, it was that amazing pass from Coutinho. Neymar, don't get me wrong, he's A-Rod, he's talented, but he is a superstar trying to find form.
And addicted to social media, addicted to attention, addicted to the image.
Right, Coutinho is leading that team quietly and in the way you need a leader to be.
That's a good connection. That's a really good comparison. Russia reminds me of the Toronto Raptors. Amazing home field advantage. For the Raptors, they won all of their games basically in Toronto this year. But you never took them seriously in the playoffs because they're the Raptors. And even though they're the 1 seed, they're still the Raptors. For Russia, they played great getting out of the group stage. They got got all this amazing support in Russia, but you just know it's about to end right now.
I'm going to do very little on Russia because the comparison that kept coming up in my mind is the Oakland Anabolics, the Oakland A's. I am not alleging that Russia are doing any steroids. I'm not alleging that there is a systematic doping, state-sponsored doping involved. There are question marks. They have ran more than any other team.
This is a good conspiracy theory.
Look, I don't like to tar people with the brush. You go out there, you Google it.
But you just did.
Just go out and Google Russia, doping, soccer, do the whole thing. Watch the documentary on Netflix. Eyebrows are raised again. Icarus, exactly. I don't want to talk too much about Russia, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you, they've been able to win games without a ton of possession.
So they're playing dirty pool, is what you're saying?
I don't want to talk about anything involving Russia. It's 2018, DA. You know how this works.
Yeah, who knows? Putin might just come down, zap this video, and you'll never see it, and we'll be gone.
Right, exactly.
All right, so let's move on to Croatia. And you talk about two tremendous players with complete synergy. They've got an ESP going on in the midfield. Could that be the Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash era Dallas Mavericks? They kind of just have something going on.
And they didn't win together.
Right.
And Croatia, since their first appearance in 1998, and they went to the semi-final, they've always been considered a perennial dark horse, which is just a lazy way of saying they're always good, right? Okay, we'll put them down as somebody who can do something.
But they're never going to win the whole thing, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And you know what? In this Open World Cup, there's a chance that they could really go deep in it. And also, if you look at Mandzukic, Rebic, they've got some pieces around this team. They've also got physicality too. Yeah, I'm happy with that one too.
And everyone loved the Croatia checkerboard jerseys, kind of like everybody kind of loves, in a weird, sarcastic way, Mark Cuban's Mavericks hockey jersey. So there's something there too. Okay, on to Sweden. Is it possible? The Swedes are kind of like the Tennessee Titans. Sledgehammer, boring. You know, the Titans wanted to play defense and smash mouth. And ultimately, you knew you just couldn't win like that anymore.
So I disparaged Sweden on your show across this great nation.
Quite a bit.
Across America, I said terrible things and I made lazy insinuations about IKEA and their style of play.
Which we love.
And they came out in their final game knowing that a win would set them up and send them straight to the knockout stages, and they did exactly that. They have talent in Emil Forsberg, who I feel is underused. I've said that before. In Toivonen and Berg, they've got tall players that can impact the forward line, and you can play direct to them. And the best thing about them is that they're hard to beat, they're hard to break down. Italy discovered that in those games. So I thought, well, I'm a Mets fan, so I thought 2015 Mets. As the Mets went on that run, and I know Daniel Murphy was hot, and I know they had Cespedes, so that's probably more than Sweden have. But what were they based on? Defense and pitching.
No doubt.
Sweden, people are sleeping on Sweden.
Really? I mean, you completely trashed them on my show.
Because I didn't think they'd come out and play. And at some point in a tournament, you have to come out and play, right?
Okay.
And they did. 2015 Mets. That doesn't mean they're going to the World Cup final.
My question finally, on England. You tab them, the New York Jets.
Yeah.
Tabloid fodder. We keep hearing about the one championship back in the 60s. Fan base wants to believe, but is kind of cautiously optimistic that they bear out being the Jets.
Sure, if the Jets had like a cupcake start to the season, you know, where they're like at home to two absolute dog teams who are terrible.
They beat the Browns 31-3. People are going, this Jets team is real.
Beat the Browns, and who else should they beat?
The Bears.
The Bears. They beat the Browns and beat the Bears, and all of a sudden you're 2 wins in and you're like, this is amazing. And then they come up against Belgium. They completely switched their team, which seems a bit like Rex Ryan era Jets.
Very.
Except it was on the other side. The Colts dropped all their players and the Jets beat them, and Rex started beating his chest. They're still very much the Jets because of the hype machine. The hype machine is in overdrive right now. It's 3 notches since we last spoke. You know what? Gareth Southgate is not as overstated as Rex Ryan was. He's very much more calmer, but in his own way, he's kind of contributing to this thing. They're still the Jets for me until they're not the Jets.
That's the perfect way to end this. They're still the Jets to me until they're not the Jets.
Right.
Those are the 2018 FIFA World Cup comparisons to American sports teams. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe. JJ Devaney, Caught Offside Podcast. Follow him on Twitter at JJ Devaney and
at CO Soccer Pod on Twitter.